Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night to all our friends around the world. I'm here in the Circle of Trust with my very dear friend, Sharon. It's an honor for me, and I'm going to cry now.
Don't cry.
Because Sharon is one of the, she is one of the people that was there with me in my tribe. And when I was raising my kids, we have two kids that are same age, same school, same class, right?
Right.
So one of the things that was so important to me in terms of Sharon being in my life was the fact that she didn't do judgment. You know, I was in a very difficult situation at the time. It was totally crazy. People were going, "Oh my God, what is she doing?" And Sharon never judged. And it's one of those people that make a decision of not judging, even though it's difficult to, it's kind of like a process, right? And the other thing that fascinates me with Sharon is that she I have talked about the father-mother alliance, father-mother alliance rather than competition. And they did it amazingly well. And as I have mentioned before, my father and my mother had that alliance, and it's about putting the child in the center of the circle from 0 to 6, because if you don't put the child in the center of the circle of trust from 0 to 6, they are going to be having a tantrum for the rest of their lives to be the center of the universe.
Yes, it's so true. That's really true. I believe that's true. That, I used to say another thing, which was you were going to give it in the beginning,
Right.
when they're very small, or they will take it when they're older and teenagers, like they will have that attention, and if you don't give it to them when they're little, they will come back for it when they're 14.
Yes, and that's
And then it's a whole different ballgame, because you have so much less control when they're 14 than you do when they're 4. And so much harder, right? You might as well just go ahead and give the attention on the front end instead of, trying to sort of make up for it later on. And a lot of parents wind up there with the teenagers that really want that attention that they didn't get when they were 4.
Yeah.
And that's a bad place.
Exactly.
Really raising children is not that hard, I don't think. I think we make it very difficult. And of course, we keep families overly busy, so they can't really interact very effectively with each other, which is also something that, that's a reality that doesn't get, the parents don't get any sort of relief for, that they really don't have the time to raise their children effectively. But if you can start at the beginning with a real idea that they need like really constant attention for, 6 or 7 years when they're little, and that you just really have to go ahead and try to make sure that somebody's providing it for them, so that they can feel secure.
Yeah. Because attention, because in reality, we talk about love, 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 love. I love you, I love you, I love you, but I don't see you. And I am not giving you the attention. So in reality, what love is attention. And the other thing that I admire about Sharon, because of her own circumstance, is that she didn't fall in the trap that women in my generation fell, which is work and raise children at the same time, which is a lovely idea. But the point is that in reality, the children suffer those first 6 years that are so important. And you made that decision of, being a housewife, of being at home, a homemaker, and giving them the attention. And I take my hat off for that. I
Well,
did that for
I
6 years. Uh-huh.
my daughter, I remember when she had her first child, she came to me and she goes, "Mom, I just need an office so bad." And she said, I hope that doesn't disappoint you. And I said, of course not. The reason that I did all of this was so that you would have the option to do whatever you wanted when you were an adult. So that's your option. Whatever makes you happy is, and lots of women want to work and have children. I understand that. What I'm saying is we don't give them enough support for them to do it effectively. And I think in a lot of instances, we put a lot of weight on their shoulder about it. And we don't acknowledge how difficult it is.
Acknowledging, very important word.
We don't acknowledge it. And I think it's really unfair. And so I think it's incredibly unfair. And I think you can give your children plenty of attention that they need and still work and do other things.
I agree completely.
But
we don't have the manual.
Right. But you absolutely have to make sure that you come back down from the cloud to the ground, and stay in those moments with small children, those eternal moments.
Yes.
Because when children are very small, their timeline is so much different than ours, that their moment, their now moment, is a really big place.
Yes.
I mean, the now is a really big place.
The now is eternal. That's when it is eternal.
It is. That moment is eternal. And so you can be with a small child that's 3 or 4, and it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the 3 hours between 4 and 7 will feel like 2 or 3 days, because they are living actually in the moment, and those moments are gigantic for them. So it isn't that you have to spend a huge amount of time, but the time you do spend with them, you have to pay attention to them. You can't put them off. You can't, you really need to put your phone down. You really need to put your face in their face. You really need to get in there with them and adore them, because they need to be adored. They really
center of the circle.
They need to be in the center of the circle. They need to be the adored one. And so you have to, and so these moments, and like I said, our culture doesn't really give us very much time to do this.
And there is let me I'm sorry to interrupt, but let me say one more thing that relates to what you're talking about. The other choice that you made, which is a choice that very few women do, including myself, is that you chose a good father.
I did.
And to you, the most important thing was that you were partnering with something that would make an alliance with you by raising children, in spite of the problems that you could have had as a couple.
Well, and that's right. That's true. I did do that. I remember meeting my husband's father for the first time, and He was such a lovely Spanish man. I mean, he was big and expansive and inclusive, and and he adored the people around him so much. It's like he had these hands that he was like, he was always like grasping for, for you to come closer to him. And, that thing of like, bringing people in, he really wanted them close to him. They meant so much to him. And he made these things really obvious. Like he demonstrated them in such a lovely way. And I thought, if you have a father like that, that pays attention to you like that, that gives you that kind of attention, that kind of adoration, you really do grow up to be like my husband. I always say that he had a bubble around him, because he never gets hurt. He never stubs his toe. He never gets sick. It's like somebody literally put a bubble around him. I don't know how he does it. I mean, I can hurt myself by standing up. I don't have to do anything to hurt myself. It's really easy and happens all the time. But he never does that. He never hurts himself. He never has any kind of drama with his body.
Right.
He is just like, he was adored so completely as a child that the world really, he's pretty much impervious to the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune and coffee tables,
I know, and here's the thing with Alan, Michael's father, that I always heard you talk about it, and it touches my heart, and but for the first time I see that he had that same thing that my father had, which is the inclusion, right?
Right.
Inclusion, cooperation, unity,
right.
Right. Transparency, and abundance, because what happens is that
it was always the affection. The affection with his grown children was like, I just want to get my hands on you. It's he just, I just want to get my hands on you. Get over here and give me a hug. I just need to kiss you. And it was, he was just like, it was just this, it was like such a thing, like a real need and urgency, like, oh, I haven't seen you for a week. I need to touch you, and so he was like that. I loved that so much. It was so different than my family, who were very non-affectionate and pretty cold. And so, that kind of warmth was really a different thing for me.
A bomb.
But yeah, it is a bomb. And the thing is, like I said, I made those choices. I remember thinking, oh, so he has a father that was lovely and wonderful to him and made him feel loved and included and adored all the time. How nice for him. Oh, I want my kids to have that. I would like to have some of that.
Exactly. So now
let's have some of that.
Of course. And ladies, by the way, this is the formula, pay attention to the parents, I remember years ago, I think it was with you, we went to the Children's Museum, to the art practice. There was an art exposition in Washington, D.C. every year for local artists. And we get in there and I see this thing, which is like a mattress on the wall. And the mattress was full of people. That's what happens when you get married.
Yes, exactly.
Right? You marry the whole legacy from the family.
You do. You do.
And it happens the same when you join the workforce. Believe it or not, it's the same patterns. So I I wanted to say something about this because it's so, you told me a story that I love so dearly from recently, talking about Michael being the son of his father and now being the grandfather of his grandchildren, right?
Right,
So
exactly.
this story is so great because, we, in the beginning, like 6 years old, the character of the child is already designed. It's there.
Right,
So that's why it's so important, the first 6 years. The thing is that from 6 to 10, the child is going to develop what we call the ego. I don't like it to call it the ego because it's very misinterpreted. To me, the ego is a defense mechanism to cope with the reality of 3 dimensions and duality and good and bad and blame and guilt and punishment. Therefore, by 10 years old, the child has already developed this self-mechanism. What
right.
happens is that this self-mechanism works forever until you are maybe in your 30s, when it doesn't work anymore because you're not a child anymore. And so
Right.
that's when you kind of go to the ego and say, Mr. Ego, thank you for your help, but now I'm a grown up. Let me get the right,
The
the
ring. Yeah, let
yes.
me the reins. I will drive that. I will drive the
I will
life.
drive it from now on, right? So,
This is my
so
life. I'll drive it now.
yeah. So you told me, please tell the story about Michael with Christopher, please.
Well, it was a great story. I loved it so much. He was with Chris, and he's like 6 years old, and he's having a tantrum, and Michael's just looking at him. I mean, my children really didn't throw tantrums because they were always right there with me.
Yeah.
The ones that don't get the right attention, they throw tantrums. Well, Christopher likes tantrums, so he's throwing a tantrum. And Michael gets down on the floor right next to him and looks in his face, and he looks in his eyes, and he says, Christopher, this never works. You never get anything for this. You make all of this halloo. It makes everybody uncomfortable. We're all just wishing you would stop. And there's nothing in it for you. It never works. Nothing ever comes of it. And Christopher goes, well, it works with my other grandma.
Ego developed.
And so, and Michael goes, I understand that. I understand that it works with your other grandma, but it's never going to work with me. So you might as well just stop doing it, because I am never going to, give into, what you want because you had a tantrum. In fact, having a tantrum in my house means you absolutely are not going to get what you want. I mean, so it's not going to work here. So you can do it with your other grandma if that's what works with her, but here it's not going to work. And then, we have not had problems since. But I thought why are you doing this? Michael was just like, he was just confused, like, why?
Where
Why?
did it come from?
Yeah,
Not my
why are you
experience.
doing this? What is it for? And of course, that's the legacy of his family,
Yeah.
people
It's so
that
beautiful. And the part I love, which is so important, is like going on your knees and looking at him, eye to eye at the same level,
exactly.
which is another important thing, rather
Well,
than
and
top
then
down.
asking the question is also a really interesting thing to do with children, which is
Yes,
that they
why?
do things
Exactly.
and they get a lot of do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. But very often nobody ever asks them the question, why are you doing that? You know, why? What is it that you think that you're getting out of this? Because I don't see it. I'm not seeing what you're getting out of it. And it's such a good question to ask a small child because they have an answer. They have an answer. They know why they're doing what they're doing. They actually know.
And if they
And
trust you,
tell
they will tell you why.
and they will tell you why. And it's amazing. And you're just like, and you go, oh, I see now. Oh, that all makes sense now that you've given me your context, which, you know, and that's just the respective of and what you should do with everyone in your life is have respect for their context and actually ask them why they're doing what they're doing. If you don't understand, you can just say very simply, I don't understand what you're doing. I don't understand why you're doing it. Can you tell me why you're doing it?
That's such
And
a
they
good
will give
point.
you, they will
Yes.
give you their context, and then you
Yes.
can go, oh my God, that's a wonder. That makes all of this makes sense. And then you
Yeah.
don't have to be angry or frustrated or
Yeah.
confused. You can just be in it with them and go,
Yeah.
oh, okay, so this is your context. This is what you're doing. You know, how can we, you know, hold hands together and do something else maybe, or something more effective, or can we come
And
up
then,
with another idea?
right. And that is what I'm presenting here, and you and I are presenting, you know, that in a matriarchal society will happen. In a patriarchal society or group or whatever, you know, the father is going to be talking down, blaming, guilting, and punishing.
Right.
A matriarchal society, which is what my father did and Michael did and his father did,
Right.
it's why.
Right.
Darling, let's go sit down and tell me why. And since you planted the seed of trust, they're going to tell you exactly why.
It's very
And
simple.
then
Yeah,
you can
that's very
actually
simple.
resolve the problem. Not only that, but the child will automatically be self-responsible rather than guilt and blame everybody else for their problems.
Exactly.
It's a very
And
simple equation.
yes, it is. It's a very simple equation. And you know, these are not, you know, these are not like, you know, ideas that are complex or that have any kind of like, you know, this isn't, you know, I'm not, it isn't 101 of anything. It's just, you know,
Not
being a
rocket
human
science.
being. It's just being a human being with other human beings. It's not any big whoop. It's just trying really hard to respect small people, medium people, big people, old people, you know, all people, you know, every person that needs some respect and a little bit of, you know, somebody understanding their context.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is one of the great things about the intersectionality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the intersectionality of, you know, racism and sexism and all those things, they're very easily discombobulated with actually understanding the other person's context.
Right.
You know, it really is, it's pretty simple. I think it's simple. I think that, you know, there's so much communication that's really complicated, and I'm not sure, I don't think it makes people more secure. It makes them more insecure.
Well,
And
you know, that's exactly the point. And this is why I want to go through my father's rules with children, either, you know, whether you divorce or not, you know, same
right,
rules, right?
right,
So the connection of trust with the mother is fundamental from 0 to 6 years old. it's the, it's the tit, it's the milk, right? It's the
Right.
nourishing. Then the second one is exactly what you're saying, which is father and mother must be united for the common good of the children, including in a divorce, right? United,
Right.
because they have a common, it's like Michael says, or everybody say,
Right.
we have this common mission that's really important. That's our children, is the legacy we're leaving in the world. I beg your pardon, right?
Exactly. Yes, this is
So it's
our.
important if you had children. So the third one is children are not to be separated under any circumstances, neither mentally nor physically, which is true because, if there's trauma in the family, the children support each other, then they unite with each other rather than, separate. You take away that opportunity. Then the other one that's incredibly important is the battles of adults are not to be fought in the minds of children.
No.
That's a huge one.
No, the battles of adults definitely should not be fought in the minds of children. And, this is a really fundamental thing. And it goes across the culture. It isn't just the mother and father, it's the culture should not fight its battles in the minds of children.
And the more reason, if the culture is there, we have more responsibility to change that within the nucleus of the family, right?
Absolutely.
And as you said before, that's exactly what my father said. The foundation of security of a child is mother-father unity for the good of the child. So 100%, and I commend you for doing that with your children. The way you danced that with your husband was absolutely beautiful. Then these are the two most important ones. They're not, no differences are to be made between children. And the last one is a child is not to be labeled good or bad. Because go on with that one, darling.
I was absolutely adamant about that. I remember I raised my children in the 90s, and it was a time when, they were giving everybody a trophy, whether you won or not. And there was just a lot of, sort of like you couldn't have any losers or whatever. I thought that was bad, because I thought, why compete in a race if you're, if everybody's going to get a trophy? I thought it was kind of silly. But the thing that I really tried hard not to do was to label everything they did either good or bad. To say,
thank you. That's something you did all around in your life.
I did that a lot, which was, I just was like, they would come to me with their picture or their project from school or whatever, and I would look at it and I would go, oh, that's fine. That's really fine. And then I would give it back to them, and they would have a smile on their face and they would run me. But I didn't say, oh, that's really great. Oh, that you, so that's the best picture ever. I didn't say, oh, you could have done better. That's kind of a crappy picture. You should have spent more time doing that. I didn't do either of those things. All the pictures were fine. They were all fine. And the reason I did that was because I just thought it was crazy that everything that little kids were doing was being labeled either great or horrible, great or horrible.
Right. Very good point.
Duality of, everything you do gets a value judgment. And I was like, that, it's exhausting for me, and I'm a grown-up. It must be exhausting for them. They're just little kids, right? And so, they don't have to, be the greatest or the worst. They can just be fine. And so that was the word that I I sort of chose.
I think it's a very good word, and it's a very good tip. Thank you so much, Sharon. It's perfect. It has to be neutral because we are in a celebrity society where we are trying to make people be the only one among 7 billion people. I'm sorry. It's completely ridiculous.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And it also, it can really dampen a child's enthusiasm for anything. And you want your children to be enthusiastic about things. But if you tell them that they do it great, then they lose their enthusiasm for trying because there's nowhere to go because they're already great.
That's a good point.
Nowhere to go, and if you tell them that it's crap, then there's no reason to try because, look, I tried my hardest on this and it's just crap. So, I really thought it was the worst thing you could say to a kid was, oh, that's the greatest or that's the worst. And, just throwing these value judgments at them all the time. Yeah. Oh my God, I have such passion about that.
Yeah.
Because I really do believe, for the most part, if you just say it's fine, that's all they want. They just want to be acknowledged that they did it. And they just want to go, oh,
and it's up to them to go higher in their own independent
my kids argued with me about fine. Sometimes my daughter would go, well, it could be better, Mom. And I said, well, do you think
it's good enough?
Then, you should make a better one, but, the thing is that, I was really, really dedicated to the idea of not making every move they made, every step they took, every word out of their mouth have a value judgment associated with it.
Yeah.
I was really dedicated to that idea.
And it's the good and the bad and the labeling and everything. And so exactly. I really want to go to the last point, which is the sixth rule, which is labeling. And it has to do with the good and the bad too,
Right.
But the point is that what we don't realize, many times people do that because they don't know any better, because their parents did it with them. So they are passing the torch without knowing. Because basically we learn through modeling and we don't have a manual anyway. So, so the thing about that is that what you're really doing is planting the seeds of war in the nucleus of the family.
It's very easy to do, because of competition and especially having everybody competing with each other, so that nobody feels like their place is like. I tried really hard to make my my home a place of harmony. I wanted it to be harmonious. I grew up in a situation of chaos, and it made me nervous, and it upset my sense of myself, and I didn't want to pass that on. So I tried to make my home harmonious for the most part, and really my children love each other more than they love me or my. They loved each other the most.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
That's what came out of my harmonious little situation, and trying really hard not to get in the way of what it was that who they were, because they are actually people. They might be, smaller than us, but they are actual human beings, from the very beginning, and they have their own selves. Their own.
My children are not my children; they are passing through, right?
Exactly so.
Yeah.
Exactly so.
So
I really did. I did do that, but when you get to school and they start, you know, trying to shove round pegs into square holes and, you know, pigeonholing kids and with, you know,
Yeah.
A's and B's and C's and
Yeah.
stuff. I mean, I think they do them a real disservice.
Yeah.
And then the children pick it up and then they do it to each other,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
is even worse.
And
You
then they
know,
have children, and then you don't have to worry too much unless there's a, you know, something. But basically, yeah.
well, you know, I mean, they were calling kids nerds when I was in school.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, I'm old and they're still doing it.
Yeah.
They're still pigeonholing some kids as nerds, you know, I
Yeah.
mean, like they're still using that same
Yeah.
terminology. It just gets passed down, you know,
Yeah.
through elementary
So,
school over and over again. I mean,
so
it's a terrible,
yeah. So
it's a terrible
so the
thing.
idea, going to that same point, you know, that the idea that you label in your household the scapegoat,
Right,
the golden girl,
right,
the untouchable because it's a boy,
right.
and the what do you call it, the one that doesn't exist, right? Almost,
And
you
then the
know,
invisible,
the invisible,
the
right?
invisible
So
one,
when
yeah.
you're doing that, you're literally planting the seeds of war in the nucleus of the family, and what comes out of that is war. It's
Yeah,
war. It's the same war that we are fighting in the macro with the narcissists, you know,
right,
that lost their true self to their false self because they were not embraced the way
right,
they were supposed to.
right,
So it's really important, you know, you cannot go, you know, and be an activist fighting for peace if you did that in your family. Of course, everybody's doing the best they can with what they have. You didn't know, but this is a very important thing. If we really want to eradicate war from the world, let's eradicate it from the
right.
nucleus of the family, because that's where it starts, right?
Well, you know, and we have really important things that need to be done, and we need people that are well enough in whole enough to, you know, to help us to do them, to be leaders and to, you know, help us to do the things that we need to do to go forward. And, you know, we have a lot of things that need attention. And, you know, it's a real distraction when all of the adults, instead of doing the work that needs to be done to sort of, you know, pull us all forward into the future, are, you know, just out there seeking attention.
Thank
Because
you.
they didn't,
Because they didn't have it.
because they didn't get it, you know.
And then they get married with the father that didn't give them the attention, or the mother, or whatever it is, and they dump
Exactly.
all that on that person, which also needs to learn it, because somehow, you know,
Yeah.
we are electromagnetic beings, and if you are a trustworthy person, you're going to attract somebody that doesn't trust, because that their soul needs to learn how to trust, and you learn to set boundaries. So it's
Right.
kind of like the lesson, the life lessons that we recreate in order to overcome somehow.
Right.
So yeah, very
Yeah.
interesting.
And,
So
you know,
yeah,
and so, you know, I mean, I would love to hear more labels like, you know, this person is trustworthy and this person is honest and this person is lovely and that person, and you know, it lights up.
authentic, authentic.
Yeah, they're authentic, better labels. I
Yeah.
want better labels, and I
Yes.
don't want them to be about sex or race or,
Thank
you
you.
know, things that people cannot help
Yeah.
about themselves. You know,
Yes.
I mean, if you can't do anything about it, you know, you shouldn't be labeled for being that, because
Right.
what are you going to be?
Yeah.
I mean, this is my voice. This is my face. This is who I am. You can't alter that. You know, this is just who I am. So you can't, you know, better labels, better labels. This person, you know, is a great advocate. This person is a, you know, I mean, give us better labels.
Yes.
Please.
So Sharon, we had a conversation yesterday about, you know, creating a manual for parents. And yesterday night, I had Woody coming home, and we were talking about the project and the circle of trust and everything. And um, he says, well, you know, how are you? This should be put there to help parents, right? So what's my target audience? Parents. But more than parents, it's the inner child inside of those parents.
Right.
Because that's the one that needs to make the connection with himself or herself, to restore the belief in themselves and to restore the trust so that they can give it back to their children and they can trust others, because otherwise we're creating people. You know, the Chinese say this thing, which is the black snake. They say that it's the mindset of the black snake, which is that I will kill you before you kill me.
Right.
Without regard of ever imagining that the person in front of you never had the idea of killing you, right? It's either you or me, right? But that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of what you call the virus of the mind. I believe
Exactly.
that there's a lot of it. And you know, mostly the only real, the way I see it, the best anecdote for the virus of the mind is kindness. And, you know, and I mean kindness for everybody. And especially for children, because children have a very hard row to hoe right now in the world, much harder than the place we grew up. It's 100%. A much harder place, and they need kindness, and they need to be adored, and they need to be seen and acknowledged, and they need that every single day. Right. And so, you know.
So we're going to do the manual for parents, Sharon?
Yeah, I guess we'll do we'll do it for parents. You know, I really wish for all parents. The thing I would most wish for all parents is that before they go to bed every night, that they have said to their child, I love you, and then give them a hug. Every child should get an I love you and a hug before they go to bed every day, the whole time, until they, you know, disappear into the sunset. You know,
totally.
You know, when they're 48 and you see them, you should give them a hug and tell them that you love them. They need it all the time. That's my last word.
And now with, you know, I always love the Avatar movie that brings to the surface such a concept, which is I see you, right? Because when you say to your children you love them, they know that you see them.
Absolutely.
But if you say I love you because it's just something that you need to go, but you're not actually seeing them, it doesn't work either.
No, it doesn't. And you know, like I said, this stuff does not take an enormous amount of time. No. It just needs to be done pretty on a real regular basis, so that they don't forget from day to day, or that you don't forget from day to day, that, you know, that they really are important to you and that you adore them and love them. You need to remind yourself also, because sometimes they're not fun. You know, sometimes having children is not fun. And so you need to remind yourself that you love them and adore them. It's like, you know, you really need that reminder sometimes, you know. Some days aren't all that easy. You know? Some days are hard. You know, they really are. I remember doing that, like going, okay, I had a bad day. Go, and I would tell myself, well, just go kiss the kids, you know.
Yeah,
Put them to bed.
yeah, that's true. It's such a
You
bit,
know,
yeah,
it makes everything better. And it reminds you that even bad days, you know, can end well, you know,
yes,
and so,
yes,
you know, let's
yes,
all go to bed.
totally. So, yeah, so, okay, so I'm going to tell a story because there's a core belief. There's something like very fundamental here in what we've been talking about. So in order to finish this conversation for now, because we'll have many more, I'm going to tell the story of my father. Um, I got from my father and my mother, because they taught me that in unity, the perception that every human being had a light inside. All of them. There's no difference ever. So
Mhm.
I got to 10 years old in a difficult situation, I have said before, but I got there without judgment, prejudice, blame, guilt, nothing. So I had that base of the circle of trust, and
Right.
I could operate within the pain. I'm not saying it was easy, but I could see the good things coming out of the bad really fast, because I because victim was not an option for me, because I never saw it, right? So
Absolutely.
I'm going to tell this story that I told you yesterday that I remember recently. I had forgotten. My father never punished us, and again did what Michael does, which is why, you know, if
Right.
somebody's tattletelling on somebody, instead of saying, they go the accused, my father takes the accused to a room, you know, and talk to him, and goes back and says, I'm sorry, but in this tribe we don't tattletale.
Right.
Sorry, we
Right.
don't
And
do that,
normal, and
you
yes,
know.
we use that terminology a lot in my house too.
Yeah,
In our house, we don't do that. And they
yeah,
go, if they do it over at so-and-so's house,
I don't care.
we don't care. We
Too
don't
bad.
care.
Yeah,
In our house,
exactly.
that's the way we do
Yeah.
things, you
So
know. Yeah.
the story is that I was 5 years old, and this is the only time I saw my father furious with me, like furious, furious, furious. Um, the great thing is that no matter how furious he was, it didn't had to do with my essence, it had to do with his principle, right? So it wasn't like I was scared, but I was shocked. He never did it again. The situation was that I was in kindergarten, and I was the golden girl, everything beautiful, the first of the class. My mother was like giving me 100% attention. And I was invited to a birthday party. In those days you had these dresses with the can things, underneath and all of it. So I remember
Jingle
going,
bell.
yeah, so this birthday was from a friend of mine, from my class, kindergarten, who adored me. And so we're there, and my father and myself, and the mother opens the door. The mother is gorgeous. The father, the house is gorgeous. And then my friend Isabel comes behind, to greet me, and she smiles at me. And it turns out that she had a physical condition of some sort, that got her teeth black, completely black. And interestingly enough, I never had anything with that before that day, right? Because I've been already for a year or whatever time in kindergarten. But that day, when she comes and gives me the black smile, I froze. And it's like, I'm not going in there. I'm not going in there. I'm not going in there. So my father tried to reason with me, and no, I was not going to go. So finally, my father apologized to the mother and took me home. It was a Saturday, so again, I have never been punished. It's the only time I was punished. So, you know, I had a party, and of course, my father and my two brothers were going to go somewhere else for dinner, you know, somewhere for dinner while I was at the party. So when we got home, of course, he asked why, you know, and I explained. And he was screaming bloody murder, like furious. And he says, you never, ever again discriminate another human being because of a physical condition. We don't do that. And now you're going to stay home and think about this, you know, and we're going to go out with your brothers and your mother.
Well, I love that. I love that your father chose that, because I think this is a simple way we could undo a lot of harm, is if people would just stop holding people accountable for things they cannot change. You know, you can't change your skin, you can't change your teeth, you can't change your face, you can't change your abilities, you can't, I can't wake up tomorrow and be a violinist. You
Yeah,
cannot change some things, and to hold each other accountable for things that we cannot change is
right.
very cruel. It's a very cruel thing that we do to each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
discrimination. It is.
Yeah.
And we could do without it.
Yeah.
We could really do
Absolutely.
without it.
So I think that, you know, we've covered what we wanted to cover today.
We did. It was lovely. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sharon. Always thank you, because I always felt like the conversations I've had with you should be aired always. So this is the first one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye, people.
Mwah. Bye, darling. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the next one.